Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning in UK time. What I'm gonna talk about is my own exploration of history, heritage, and identity through clay, and I'm gonna do it so by talking about three of the projects that I've developed in the last 6-7 years. I want to start by saying that we are here in this event that focuses on Black Lives Matter and dignity and human rights because there's been, in a way, a rebirth in the civil rights movement. Mostly because of Black Lives Matter movement and what happened with George Floyd and all the events that follow it and how it has escalated globally. But also, I personally think that we're in a very crucial moment because COVID and the pandemic has put on the spotlight so many social injustices that are still very much prevalent in our societies today. And so, even though the civil rights fight goes back centuries, starting maybe with the abolition of slavery and then women's suffrage all over the world, and the civil rights movement in the US, and then we can say like the gay rights and disabled people's rights, etc. Today, still, there's a lot to be done because we keep on focusing on what makes us different rather than celebrating what unites us and what makes us one as humans. And this is where I bring clay in because I find that clay may be one of the very few things that there are that actually reminds us of our humanity and of our being one, in the sense that clay has been with humans since forever. And I find that it's amazing to look at pieces that have been done in different countries that are completely disconnected in cultures or tribes centuries ago, and to see how they look very similar, and how also we've got as humans or as groups, we've got to the same conclusions when it comes to dealing with clay, in the sense that the shapes we make, how we make them, how we finish pieces, how what things from nature we use in order to shape, in order to finish, firing as well. So to me that taps into our some of our more basic needs, and also our more basic way of being, in a way, which is what we share and what brings us all together. And here you have some pictures, like the woman on the left is Rufina from Mexico, from Oaxaca, and the women on the right, Mama Isha and Hadla, they are from Morocco. And I was with them in different moments in the last 4 years, and yeah, I was amazed by the way they make, how they make the pieces, what they use, the tools, etc. They've made themselves, and they are all pretty much very similar. So this is what I've just talked about, my experience of the world through clay and how I see it because of the clay. And now what I'm gonna talk is about the experience in my own skin through clay, because I was born and raised in Spain. I am half Spanish and half from Equatorial Guinea, and growing up, those two halves weren't very much balanced. They were, because I was in a white society in Spain. I only have been to Equatorial Guinea once, and then all my friends were white. All the role models, all the reference, or whatever I was looking in or seeing in television and reading, etc., was white. So I pretty much thought that I was white. However, the Spanish society didn't see me that way. Whenever I would say I'm Spanish, people would be like, "But where are you really from?" Which maybe is a question some of you out there might be familiar with. And so with clay, with some of the first projects that I did, now looking at them in hindsight, I think that I know that I was doing them in order to prove that I was Spanish. And my last project, which is the last one I'm going to talk about today, is more about connecting with my other half, with my African roots, with my blackness. So I'll start with one of the first ones, which is with embroidery. And as you may know, because maybe embroidery is also a tradition in your country, so the same as ceramics is a craft, and pretty much done by women historically, and a bit like ceramics in some places is dying. And it's a good way to assess the age or the average age in a house, because if there's some piece of needlework or embroidery on a table or on a sofa, an old person lives there, and young people are like, oh my god. So what I wanted to do was to bring them both together in order to make them more appealing to younger generations. And the beauty of these two crafts is that, as I was saying before, is they are shared in many different countries and many different cultures. So I was invited to run a 3-week course in Armenia, in Yerevan, to kind of like inspire young people to look at their own heritage and their own history and their traditions and the history of embroidery and ceramics to make them more appealing to a contemporary market, let's say. And it's very interesting there because embroidery is supposed to have been invented around that area where Armenia used to be back in the days. But now, because of the genocide and the massive diaspora, we need to think that there's more, like I think there's around 10 million Armenians all over the world, but only 1 million in Armenia. So with ceramics and embroidery, the most important hubs for these crafts are outside the current borders of Armenia. So for these young people to connect with their history, with traditions, and therefore their identity, they need to even go and search for their traditions beyond the current Armenian borders. Like, for instance, Jerusalem is huge for Armenian ceramics, and for embroidery, there's many places in Turkey. So it was a very interesting project. Now I'm going to talk about Los Pasados de Moda, which is a pun in Spanish, because if you read it one way, it can mean the things that are out of fashion. But if you, in a way, deconstruct it a little bit, it can also mean the old-fashioned things that now are trendy. And these things I'm referring to are the vessels the two people in the picture are using to drink water from, which are botijos. And botijos are vessels that are fired to low temperature, and so the clay is porous, and so it keeps the water cool. And it's something that is very much used in different Mediterranean countries, but in Spain, a botijo is the most Spanish piece of pottery that there is. Again, the same with embroidery. Young people think it's old-fashioned, it's ugly, and they don't want to use it. So what I wanted to do was to rethink the shapes and the finishings in order to make them more appealing. And like, I think it was 3 years ago that I was visiting a pottery village in the Mediterranean coast of Spain, and I met the last potter there because young people don't want to keep the tradition and learn, etc. And I spent hours with a guy, and he ended up giving me a botijo that I used the whole summer, and it was fantastic. And I think it's very important also because we live in now, like, looking at ways of being like more sustainable and having more environmentally friendly lifestyles, and so we don't need electricity with a botijo, so there needs to be a comeback for me. So these two projects, what I wanted to do on the one hand was for me to say, look, I'm making the most Spanish things that there are, so how can you there question my being Spanish? But then also I am very interested in looking at on our own traditions and revisit them and try to keep them alive, because that's who we are, is our history. And also when it comes to crafts like ceramics or embroidery, we share them with so many other people around the world that, again, that reminds us of our being one and similar, not different. And then my last project, which is called Banay Clay and an Earth Identity, I just launched this year, and it has been on an exhibition here in London for the whole of the quarantine. And for this one, I've used clay from Banay, which is my dad's village in Equatorial Guinea, and then I mixed it with white stoneware and porcelain. What I wanted to do, these are some pictures of Banay there. What I wanted to do was kind of like explore, connect, and celebrate my blackness, so that my both hands will be balanced and I will feel more centered myself. But also I wanted to challenge what I say the norm in art, in the sense that historically, when it comes to art, whatever comes from the south, we consider that it's just primitive and exotic, and we don't value it as much as whatever comes from the north. So in this case, the south is represented by my dad's clay, and then the north by the white stoneware and the porcelain. And then when it comes to pottery, so historically, pottery has been done by women and it's been hand-built. The moment the wheel is invented, that represents progress and innovation, etc., and men take over. So whatever is hand-built and done by women remains not worthy, and then whatever is the world throne and done by men is what we value. So what I wanted to do is to bring all those concepts together, mix them, because I believe that beauty is in the mix. And so I mix the clays, but then I also, like we see in these pictures, I mix the techniques. So in these ones that you are seeing, the legs are wheel thrown and the top is coiled. So again, what I wanted to do is to celebrate the mixing, celebrate us bringing together, and remind us of the fact that we are all one. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it.